North America's largest Ramadan Suhoor festival was canceled this year.
I bear great responsibility of hosting this festival at this time. The American dream is nothing but an illusion.
They say the greatest power in the world right now is the shift in U.S. public opinion. Don't you think that you have a duty as a Muslim American?
The decision we make this year in this election is going to be huge for what comes to play in 2028.
Do you feel like people are angry with you at this decision?
To be honest with you,
Welcome back to The Hard Truth with TMJ News. I'm Zainabrights. North America's largest Ramadan Suhoor festival was canceled this year, and organizers say this is because of what is happening in Gaza. I'm joined by Hassan Chami today, founder of this festival, and asking him more about what led to this decision. Welcome, Hassan.
thank you for having me.
What led to this decision of canceling the Suhoor festival this year?
The genocide in Gaza, I think, is a very easy decision to make. What we're seeing, what we're witnessing, especially for our generation, is something that we've never seen. And I just don't feel like I'd like to bear responsibility of hosting such a joyful Ramadan Suhoor festival at this time. It's a very somber period, and I don't think it's right.
And, a lot of people say that the festival is about charity. Why not just donate to the cause for Palestine?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of those comments. I don't believe the money we raise for Gaza justifies the joy that is at this festival. There are dozens, if not thousands, of fundraising dinners happening around the world especially during Ramadan for Gaza, and I think we can all support those initiatives. But the festival in itself has become so large, and it's too large for our team to control the tempo. And it has a reputation of being a very joyful community event, charity event.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something I worry about, is having all this joy while our brothers and sisters in Gaza are being slaughtered, being starved to death.
The festival attracts over 100,000 annually. Non-Muslims come to bridge gaps. They learn about Islam. There was a Palestine exhibit last year as well. Don't you think all of this would be lost in terms of educating and having a platform to educate the masses instead?
So there was a Palestine exhibit that I loved, and there was also a night dedicated to Palestine when they were attacking Al-Aqsa Mosque last year. But when you look at the bigger picture of how many people are attending the festival specifically for suhoor and fun with their family and friends, and how many people are focused on the Palestinian exhibit, it just doesn't make sense. Again, it's the tempo, the reputation. It's a very joyful place. So I feel like I'd bear great responsibility of hosting this festival at this time.
Do you feel like people are angry with you at this decision?
No, I feel like there's a lot of people who are supporting it. I'm getting a lot more support than criticism, but people don't understand like how much goes into this festival, right? So even the amount of energy and dedication needed for months of planning, that is sort of stripped away from us because of what's happening. Our focus is on Palestine. Every time you open up your phone on social media, you see what's going on. We don't have that energy to put this together. It's too large of an event for us to be distracted, and we're really distracted. The team and myself, we just don't feel right. It doesn't sit well with us.
What are the losses being faced by the city financially for not holding this event?
A lot of the money gets donated to orphans, but like I said, during Ramadan, there's dozens of fundraising dinners around just this community alone. So there's still initiatives to raise money. So I don't think it's that big of a loss. I think the money that's not being spent at the Ramadan Suhoor Festival can be spent at the fundraising dinners and can be donated to other charities.
There's a lot of businesses that depend financially on this festival. They come year after year to be part of something big. How did they react to this?
To be honest with you, there wasn't a single person in the group chat of all the vendors who even messaged me on the side that was upset about it. I think they understood. We also got to understand, and a message that I give at the festivals, it is from God. Your blessings, your wealth comes from God. And so if your say for instance, I'm gonna give you an example, $15,000 was written for you, and you're not gonna get it during the Ramadan Suhoor Festival, God's gonna give it to you somehow this year. So and life is all about sacrifice. So sacrificing one month, one festival is nothing compared to what the Palestinians have sacrificed. Those are brothers and sisters. Prophet Muhammad says a true Muslim is concerned with the affairs of his brothers and sisters, other Muslims around the world. And so for us to host this festival, I think personally that it is, I truly believe it's very irresponsible if I were to host it.
You just returned from Lebanon. You are Lebanese yourself. Lebanon's embroiled in this war. Would you consider this decision personal?
No, not really. It's focused more on Palestine. I mean, as somebody from South Lebanon, the Palestinian cause is part of our DNA. You know, we share this cause with them. We were raised under this cause. So what's happening in Palestine, I don't see it as if it's a personal thing. This is a part of us. It's not whether it's Lebanese or Palestinian. This is a genocide happening against our Muslim brothers and sisters, and I think this is just the right move.
You know, you've pivoted a lot. The last year, you've started your own podcast. You've been very vocal politically. Why did this change happen?
My pivot?
Yes.
Over the last I haven't had a personal social media page in probably 6 or 7 years. My social media pages have always been focused on the Ramadan Suhoor Festival and business, just to keep my family life private. But I feel like the Ramadan Suhoor Festival put me on a platform naturally, not something I was looking for, but it just put me out there. And a lot of my videos, to be honest, would catch traction when I'd speak about certain issues. And I was getting a lot of comments and a lot of support from people around me saying, hey, you should speak more. You know, people like what you have to say. You're very firm in your stance. You know, we need someone out there that's doing that. So I started to make a few videos. Early on was political against the progressive left. And then it became about Palestine. And it just happened to be that way. I'm just riding the wave. It wasn't something I planned. It wasn't something I intended on doing. But I see the success in what I'm doing, and we'll just continue to do it as long as we remain focused on what the intention is, what the purpose is. And yeah.
Do you feel that your views politically, now that you've become more vocal, have affected your decision in canceling the festival in terms of security issues, concerns?
No, I didn't think about that. I'll be honest with you. When it comes down to security, we have Dearborn police, who are the best of the best, and then we have God. So like since day one, since 2018, 2019, I had a fear of maybe someone racist coming in and just shooting up the place or whatnot. I've always thought about it, but at the end of the day, I always just said, you know, take it to Allah. God will protect this. And at the end of the month, the team and I looked at each other and be like, hey, like this was a blessing by God. Everything was so smooth. We don't have anybody going, you know, to the hospital, no emergencies, no fires. So that really hasn't crossed my mind. And to be honest, if you see now, a lot of the popular opinion out there is like people have woken up to the cause. So there's actually, I feel like there's a lot more support for the Palestinian cause than ever before. I thought I would receive a lot more criticism in my DMs than support, but it's been the opposite.
Do you think this is a trend then, supporting of Palestine?
I do think it's a trend, but I also think there's a lot of sincerity. I feel like there's many people around the world who have been exposed to the truth that they've never seen before because mainstream media has not allowed them. And then we have media like TMJ and others who are out there giving the truth on social media, who are not controlled by any Zionist company. And so I think it's just being exposed to the truth, and people literally watching a genocide on their palm of their hands. They're seeing people being starved to death, murdered for no reason. So I believe there's a lot of sincerity in this trend.
You know, you keep saying genocide. Can you elaborate what you mean by that?
It's a genocide. It's black. It's this, like, not everything in life is black and white, but this is black and white. This is a genocide. They've displaced over 2 million people. They tell them, hey, it's safe, you know, leave the north, go to the south. And when they're heading to the south, they bomb them. They've done it many times. They've attacked. There's a countless amount of videos that show that they're just killing elderly and children that are not Hamas, or what they would say a terrorist organization. I mean, what else would you call this? They're ethnically cleansing. And you've heard the rhetoric of the Zionists in Israel, all the politicians, what they've said, how they speak about the Palestinians, how they speak about the Arabs, what they intend on doing, what they want to do to Gaza, how they want to take control over it. It is what it is.
You've canceled the Suhoor festival this year. Don't you think other festivals or small pop-ups will kind of take place? What would be the difference then?
There are a few that are taking place, but they don't have the following that the Ramadan Suhoor Festival is. So they don't really bear the responsibility that I would bear. You know, they're not going to have the tens of thousands that show up. So I don't feel like some of them are donating to Gaza. A lot of them are doing it. For instance, Hype is doing it to help, like you asked me about these food trucks that they want to make their money.
Mhm.
He's giving them a place to make their money,
Mhm.
but it's not like a full blown out festival like the Ramadan Suhoor festival is. Like for me, with the Ramadan Suhoor festival, it's so large, I can't tone it down. It would be very hard to tone it down. With them, they're not there yet, so they can keep it at that base level. And I want to touch up on one other thing. Another There's another thought I had about canceling the festival. The famine in Gaza, people are starving to death. Now we're seeing pictures of kids that are malnutrition. They're they're they are dying because they have no food. All the photos of food that are being posted from the Ramadan Food Festival is another responsibility that I don't want to take. Right? Just think of everybody that comes and posts pictures of the food and is excited for suhoor and the foodies that come. And if you look on social media, on TikTok and Instagram, you see suhoor festival food everywhere. This is another thing I want to be very careful of because our brothers and sisters in Gaza don't have this food. So that'd be extremely irresponsible of us.
I feel like a lot of sadness is looming here in terms of what led to this decision. How are you feeling right now with everything you've been witnessing for the past few months?
Grateful. Of course, it's very sad, but whatever's meant to be is in God's control. But this is a time for us to reflect, to ask for forgiveness, to be grateful for what we have. And every Ramadan is supposed to be a time to seek nearness to God. It's a reset. But I feel like with what's happening in Palestine today, God gives us Ramadan could be a greater impact on our lives this year. Just on the reflection, just seeing what we have to deal with over the last 5 months. So that's also a blessing in disguise.
A lot of your time is freeing up because I know a lot goes into the planning and, you take time away from your sleep, your family. How do you plan on spending Ramadan this year?
I plan to have an iftar.
Normally?
Yeah, I plan to have an iftar, spending time with the family. The goal is to get closer to the Quran. Yeah, so I know there's a lot of barakah in what we do at the festival, but there's also a lot of sacrifice. And the last time I had a year to myself was around COVID, when the festival was canceled, and that was a very blessed Ramadan because the world was going through something different at that time, and there was a lot more reflection and whatnot. So I hope this Ramadan would have that feel again.
The festival is all about unity, community, charity. That's what you say. How do you plan on preserving that spirit for your community?
I don't think I play a role this Ramadan. I hope that just the message that I've given out the last 5 years stays in the hearts of those who've attended and the vendors. But at this time, I think I've done my part, and I'll let the other festivals or events and vendors handle it from there.
You're an American living in Michigan. Where do you see yourself going from here in terms of everything unfolding in the world right now, politically speaking?
What do you mean by politically speaking?
So how do you see, the trajectory of what's going to happen? Elections are coming up this year. What's happening in Gaza? What do you think is your responsibility as an American Muslim?
That's tough. I was never one to vote. I think I voted one time in the presidential elections because I believe they're, as George Galloway would say, two cheeks of the same behind, right? Both the Republicans and the Democrats. I was never one to vote, but now that I'm seeing this uncommitted campaign, and it's caught a lot of traction in Minnesota and other states, I believe that we can shift slightly how the politicians work in this country. But I feel like 2024 has been a loss no matter what. Whether it's Biden or Trump, we lost. And I feel like we have to focus on 2028. The decision we make this year in this election is going to be huge for what comes to play in 2028. So I don't know what the answer to that is, but I believe there has to be a very strict strategy of understanding 2024 is a loss, but what do we do today to make sure in 2028, when two new candidates come up, they are catering to the needs of the Arabs and the Muslims. Politicians can raise as much money as they want from the likes of AIPAC and all others. But at the end of the day, in states like Michigan, that's a swing state, if they don't have the votes of the Arabs and the Muslims, they don't win.
I mean, a lot of people, though, are saying that the system's broken. And, Trump's coming back. The options for Democrats is Biden. People feel like they're stifled. They're left with not many good options. Do you believe that 2028 could yield a different outcome?
Like I said, 2024 has been a loss, so whether it's Biden or Trump, it doesn't matter. I'm not too hopeful, but I believe with what the Uncommitted campaign has done and how many non-Muslim and non-Arab Americans have woken up to the cause, I feel like there can be a slight change. But at the end of the day, Congress controls everything, and those who fund Congress control America, and we have to be very we have to be realistic with that.
Hassan, you've had a busy few weeks. You've done an interview with George Galloway. You traveled to Lebanon. You're releasing a podcast. What was your interview with George Galloway like?
So I don't really fanboy a lot, but I was truly a fanboy of George Galloway. George Galloway really had an interview in 2006 on Sky News regarding South Lebanon that we all were very excited about at the time, because it was the first time we seen a non-Arab, non-Muslim who spoke out, for Lebanese on the media like that. So when George Galloway, so he first added me as a friend on Instagram.
Really?
And I was like, what? Is this real? So I checked it out. I showed my wife. And then a few weeks later, his team DM'd me and said, hey, Galloway likes your videos. He wants to interview you. So it was exciting. So it was a nice interview. It's about a 13 or 15-minute interview. It's on YouTube. But it was nice to see, how social media connects people, right? So 18 years ago, I was watching this guy on Sky News. 18 years later, he's interviewing me and we're on Instagram together. So it was nice.
This was before he won.
Yeah, exactly. So now he's back in the parliament. So it was a great timing for the interview.
Would he have messaged you now that he's bigger?
Yeah, he's a humble dude.
Okay.
He's a very, very nice guy.
Tell me about Lebanon. What'd you do there?
So I was traveling to Oman, but I made a trip into Lebanon and I met up with Said Hassan Mekki because we're doing some work together for Spiritual Warrior. Mm-hmm. Spiritual Warrior is a mentorship program for young men. And we're holding a camp in London this summer in August. It's a rites of passage camp that turns young boys to men, boy psychology to man psychology. And while we were there, I was there for 2.5 days. So we got a studio and recorded a podcast on what we're doing together. So Said Hassan is doing a lot of amazing work. He's been working on the Spiritual Warrior program for about 3 years now. And I've just joined him. So that's really exciting. And I'm happy that I was able to meet with him. And then I traveled to Oman after. And why was that? It wasn't a vacation. It was more of contemplating hijrah. So there's
really?
Yeah. So there's a concept in Islam called hijrah, when you feel like the society you live in might be a threat to you practicing your religion or your children or your grandchildren. God asks you that to travel, and the world is a huge place and there's so much to offer. And so I've been doing my research on Muscat for about 8 months. And I was supposed to go, actually, my first trip was planned back in October. Mm-hmm. And then I had to reschedule because the war started.
Right.
So we went to Muscat and it exceeded my expectations. It's a place I believe the entire Arab world can learn from. We're Shias and Sunnis, and there's a sect there called the Ibadis. They live in harmony together. Mm. I went to a Shia mosque and I prayed with Shias and Sunnis. I went to Sunni mosque, I prayed with Shias and Sunnis. It was a beautiful place. Definitely a place I recommend everyone to visit. But, we live in a time now with politics, the progressive far left pushing their secular godless ideology, the Islamophobic rhetoric, between the Zionists and America and Palestine. So for me, it's like, do we just sit back and watch, or do you see what else the world has to offer? So I went there with a few guys and we did some research, business research, looked at some homes. Who knows? Maybe one day we'll start our own little community out there.
Do you feel that you said the decision to move would be because you can't practice your religion? Can you tell me more about that? Like, do you feel living here is not,
I'm confident in how my generation practices religion. My children are okay, especially because I can afford private schools. So they go to Wise and they're doing a great job. But my concern is my grandchildren, right? It's not just about me and my kids, my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren, our lineage. Is the West a place for Muslims to raise their families? Do I feel confident that my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren will be mu'mineen? It worries me. If you just see what's happened post-COVID in the last 4 or 5 years by this godless ideology that's being pushed in public schools, all over social media, on the TVs.
And that's what you've been vocal about.
That's what I was vocal about. Yeah, exactly. Before this Palestinian issue. Mm. That's what worried me the most. So I had this idea of hijrah prior to the Palestinian. Mm. It was more about what they're pushing in the West. And
so it's just probably the desire is exacerbated with this war. that U.S.
Absolutely.
has a hand in.
Absolutely. And like I appreciate this country. I mean, I was born and raised here. It's given me a lot of opportunities from school, university to businesses. But at the end of the day, what's most important is seeking nearness to God, spirituality, and whatnot. And that's what I worry about most for my kids and my grandchildren. I'm not saying I am going to move, but it's just, a thought like maybe we should go out there and just
That's
see what the world has to
interesting
offer.
because a lot of people around the world want to move to America. They see it as the dreamland. They see it where, people can achieve what they want. And here you are thinking that you might want to move, even if you don't. The thought's still there. Why?
I
What would you
believe,
say to them who are dreaming about
yeah,
it?
actually, I had this conversation with people in Lebanon and Oman. The American dream is nothing but an illusion. Um, as a businessman myself, as successful as I can be, it's constant work, 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 work. We're slaves to work. It's work and paying bills, and it just doesn't end. It's a complete cycle. That's not what life is all about. And post COVID, I feel like they've wiped out the middle class with inflation. So now this is a country for the poor and the rich, and that's not what Islam. That's not how Islam tells you to live your life. So America, I feel like not only America, the West is collapsing morally, politically, economically, and the East is on the rise, and Islam is in the East, right? So you got the Middle East nations, the Gulf nations are on the rise. Islam is on the rise. The economics out there is better. So why would we just sit and wait? I'm already 35 years old.
But, they say the greatest power in the world right now is the shift in U.S. public opinion. Don't you think that you have a duty as a Muslim American for that reason?
Yes and no. Luckily, with social media and being an American, I can still affect the opinions through social media, but it doesn't mean I have to be a part of the society. Um, there is a shift in U.S. public opinion, but that public opinion also comes from, and not to dog anybody, because I appreciate the far left on how they're supporting the Palestinian cause, but there's still a slight difference in our beliefs, right? We're more God-centric, they're more secular. And that's what my biggest concern is raising my children in a secular society, not godless society. As soon as this country starts stripping God out of the equation in schools and in politics and whatnot, that's when the decline starts to happen. So that's my biggest worry.
You've always talked about masculinity. This is something you did a podcast with Hussein Makki with, and
Yeah.
You're now involved with his program, the Spiritual Warriors. What is something that you take away? Like, what's your biggest concern for the men or the boys growing up here? What would you say to them?
So originally, I started speaking on social media against third and fourth wave feminism. I believe the biggest cancer to society is Western feminism, where it's an illusion where it actually takes a woman away from being a woman, and it feminizes men, and it's created this false narrative of toxic masculinity, which I don't believe in. I believe there are toxic men, but the term toxic masculinity to me is nothing but a phrase to confuse young men. I believe the words that should be used are irresponsible men and weak men. And so when you use these words, you are actually mentoring the young boy or the young man to be responsible and strong rather than weak and irresponsible. But with toxic, some of these young boys think being a strong man is toxic. And that's where the confusion is. So this is another reason why I started standing up for masculinity. And when I was on this wave of speaking out against feminism, I started to find that there are very strong conservative masculine personalities on social media. But these guys are missing something. They're missing God. So they're pushing masculinity in a way that's not divine. It's in a way of having multiple women and cars and being successful, but that's not what masculinity is. So I feel like social media has created a gap. There's two extremes. And so I was on my own path of understanding masculinity through the Islamic lens, through the lens of Ahlul Bayt. And I came across, I've always known Sayyid Hassan Makki, but then we crossed paths on what I was doing, what he was doing, and then we decided to work together because we're trying to fill that gap to teach boys what is masculinity through the eyes of God. What are the 7 pillars you should like? We're focused on 7 pillars and what kids should be focused on, and this is how I got to the point with Sayyid Hassan Makki. We recorded a podcast of this in Lebanon, but I do feel like in this society it's an attack on men and women, not just men. I feel like on the left, they're attacking women by pushing this feminist agenda that is truly not feminist because it's taking away from their natural, how God has created them. And by doing that, they're pushing women against men by pushing toxic masculinity. So I feel like that's just created a divide in society.
So, you mentioned the Ahlul Bayt. Who would you say is your role model when it comes to masculinity?
Of course, Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Imam Ali, they all had their own masculine ways. But the beauty of masculinity to Ahlul Bayt is the man is a warrior on the battlefield, but he's crying in sujood, right? So with these conservative masculine traits conservative masculine personalities on social media, it's not always about being a tough guy. And Imam Ali teaches us that. Prophet Muhammad teaches us that. They teach us when to become soft and when to become a protector and a provider. And you have to balance that out. So using the teachings of Ahlul Bayt alone, you don't necessarily have to preach Islam to teach a kid masculinity, but you have to understand the message of Islam and infuse that into your teachings to masculinity for a child to understand.
I think when people think of masculinity, today's society, they think of Andrew Tate. What do you think about him?
This might be an unpopular opinion. I think a lot of what Andrew Tate says makes sense. I personally believe his abrasive personality is nothing more but a marketing stunt on social media. Because abrasiveness catches fire, catches traction. Soft-spoken and just being an academic doesn't on social media. And I've spoken to people who know Andrew Tate. And when you listen to interviews of his friends, they all speak of what a nice and soft and beautiful man this guy is. But when you listen to him on social media, like, man, this guy's too rough. But I do think his old message about the cars and the success and the money and the women and how to treat women, I think is completely wrong. That's not what masculinity is. But his message of being strong, of understanding about struggle, accepting that you have to sacrifice, that as a man you have duties in this world, I do agree with that. And that's what men have to realize. Like, life is not all about, life wasn't intended to be easy. God speaks about this in the Quran. Life is about struggle. And the beauty of life is understanding your struggle. There's a great quote by Alexis Carrel. It says, man cannot remake himself without struggle, for he is the marble and the sculptor, right? So it's the struggle, and it's the struggle that creates you. And so when Tate and all these other guys speak about, taking struggle on as a man, fighting through and keep pushing forward, I agree with those type of messages. But I don't agree with the dunya type messages of women, cars, money, success, and all that.
I think this is where the illusionment comes in, right? When we think about building takes a lot of time. Good character takes a lot of effort. Learning is slow. We live in a quick world. We want everything quick. So what do you think about that? Like, in terms of really working hard, like what you said about sacrifice, it takes a lot of struggle.
Nothing worth it in life comes easy. And that's what as a businessman myself, that's what I've come to the realization. And I've learned this from the Ramadan Suhoor festival. Ramadan Suhoor festival is a beautiful event, but I went through my own struggles. We could talk about it on this interview. My own community tried to tear me down, tried to destroy my reputation, tried to slander me because I was doing a Ramadan Suhoor festival because it was so successful. And how I came out of that is, in the beginning I was a little sensitive to it, but when you understand your intentions and you're doing things the right way, and you're resilient and you keep pushing forward, once it's all said and done and you reflect on that, you realize how strong it's made you. It's at the end of the day, you got to stay focused. You have to believe in yourself, stay focused, but most importantly, work with the purest of intentions, and then you leave the rest to God. So.
And last but not least, do you condemn Hamas? I'm just kidding. Don't answer that. No, but do you condemn Israel?
Do I condemn Israel?
Yeah.
Yeah. Israel's an illegal occupying state. It is. I condemn Israel for everything they've ever done. To us, they are not they do not have the right to exist because of the way of their existence came about. It was done through. You guys wrote about it. The history of Palestine was done through theft, through murder, through displacement of Palestinians, and no state like that deserves to exist.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us on today's episode of The Hard Truth with TMJ News. I'm Zainabrights, and I'll see you next time.